Hey everyone, welcome back to Her Light. Tonight's story might shake you to your core. Imagine discovering that the people you have devoted your entire life to see you as nothing more than a burden to discard. Picture lying awake wondering if unconditional love was actually your greatest mistake. You might not be the same person after hearing what happened to me. I certainly wasn't. So if this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Her Light, but only if you genuinely connect with these real stories. And I would love to know where you are watching from. So drop your city and current time in the comments below. Now dim those lights, get comfortable, and let me tell you about the day I learned that family loyalty can be the cruelest illusion of all. My name is Dorothy Chen, though everyone in my small Oregon town calls me Dot. At 67 years old, I thought I understood what sacrifice meant. I believed I knew the boundaries of maternal love, but nothing could have prepared me for discovering that my own daughter viewed me as disposable. For over 4 decades, my world revolved entirely around Jessica. Every decision, every dollar, every dream, all centered on giving her opportunities I never had. I worked double shifts at the textile mill, took evening cleaning jobs, sold my grandmother's jewelry, even postponed my own medical care just to ensure Jessica could attend private school, then college, then graduate school. I gave up remarrying when Jessica was 12 because she threw tantrums about any man entering our lives. I sacrificed my retirement savings to help her buy her first house. I even moved across the country when she married her husband Marcus, leaving behind my lifelong friends and community just to be near them. But life has this cruel way of revealing people's true nature when you least expect it. It was a gray Thursday morning in November when I returned from my latest assignment. For the past 3 years, I had been working as a live-in companion for an elderly gentleman named Mr. Harrison in his sprawling estate outside Portland. The arrangement had been perfect, excellent pay, comfortable living quarters, and meaningful work caring for someone who truly appreciated my presence. But Mr. Harrison had passed away peacefully in his sleep the previous week, and I would spent the last few days helping his family with funeral arrangements and transitioning his affairs. Now I was back at Jessica and Marcus's suburban home, suitcase in hand, ready to share some unexpected news that would change everything. I hadn't even set my luggage down when Jessica appeared in the foyer, her arms crossed and her expression already hardening. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer workout clothes made her look every inch the successful marketing executive she would become. But her eyes held a coldness I had been noticing more often lately. "So you are really done with the Harrison job?" she asked, without so much as a hello. Her tone carried an edge that made my stomach clench. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Harrison passed away. Sweetheart, the family will not be needing a companion anymore." Marcus emerged from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, his expensive suit already perfectly pressed despite the early hour. At 38, he would built a successful financial consulting practice, and his income had afforded them the kind of lifestyle I would only dreamed of providing. But success had made him arrogant, condescending toward anyone he viewed as beneath his social status, including me. "Great," he muttered, not bothering to hide his irritation. "So now what? You planning to just hang around here indefinitely?" The words hit like a physical blow. After 3 years of working 70-hour weeks, sending them every extra penny I could spare, this was the welcome I received. "I was hoping we could discuss my options," I said carefully. "Maybe I could help out around here for a while. You mentioned wanting to start a family soon, Jessica. I could assist with preparations." "And when the baby comes, absolutely not," Jessica interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Having a baby requires professional support. Mom, real childcare expertise. Not whatever you think you learned taking care of old people." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. We will need a qualified nanny, someone with credentials and references from wealthy families. This isn't amateur hour." Their words stung, but I pressed on. "I raised you successfully, Jessica. Surely that counts for something." Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. That was different. Standards are higher now. We cannot have our children raised by someone who, she gestured vaguely at me, leaving the insult hanging in the air. Someone who what? I asked quietly. Someone who cleans houses for a living, Marcus finished bluntly. Look, we appreciate everything you have done, but Jessica's pregnant, and we need to think about image, about what is appropriate for our social circle. My heart stopped. Jessica's pregnant. Why didn't you tell me? Jessica shrugged, completely unmoved by my shock. We are still early. But yes, which is why we need you to understand we will be hiring professional help. Real help. Of course, I will contribute financially. I offered quickly. Whatever you need for the nanny? The baby's room with what money? Marcus laughed harshly. You just lost your job, remember? You are 67 years old with no retirement savings because you spent everything on Jessica's education. Who is going to hire an elderly woman with your background? The cruel assessment hung in the air like poison. Every sacrifice I would made, every dollar I would earned, through backbreaking work, dismissed as worthless. I could find something, I said weakly, maybe part-time work. Or face reality, Jessica interrupted. You are too old for the kind of work you used to do. Physical labor isn't sustainable at your age. Marcus set down his coffee mug with a sharp clink. Actually, we have already researched some options for you. There is a senior living facility about 40 minutes from here. They are looking for kitchen staff and housekeeping assistants. Room and board included. My mouth went dry. You want me to live in a nursing home, working as janitorial staff? It is practical, Jessica said matter-of-factly. You would have housing, meals, and a small income. Plus, you would be around people your own age. It is the most dignified solution, Marcus added. Better than being a burden on us during this important time in our lives. Burden, the word echoed in my mind like a death knell. After 43 years of putting Jessica first, sacrificing my health, my social life, my financial security, I had become a burden. But what they didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that I wasn't the helpless, penniless old woman they assumed I was. Mr. Harrison had been more than just an employer. During our 3 years together, we would develop a genuine friendship. He would been a successful businessman with no surviving family, and he would watched with growing respect as I cared for him with patience, dignity, and genuine affection. When his health declined, I would advocated for him with doctors, managed his medications, and ensured he could remain in his beloved home until the end. 2 days before his death, Mr. Harrison had summoned his lawyer to the house. In my presence, he would revised his will, leaving me $12 million, along with a letter explaining that I would given him something money couldn't buy: compassion and friendship in his final years. The inheritance was currently sitting in a secure trust account, waiting for the legal paperwork to finalize. I would plan to tell Jessica and Marcus once everything was official, imagining their joy, their gratitude, their pride in having a mother who had been so honored. Instead, I was discovering their true opinion of me. I think I need some time to consider my options, I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil in my chest. Jessica sighed dramatically. Don't take forever. We need this resolved quickly. I am starting to show, and having you here unemployed sends the wrong message to our friends. Marcus nodded. The nursing home job is perfect. Take it before someone else does. I looked at my daughter, the child I would raised alone after her father abandoned us. The girl I would worked 3 jobs to support. The young woman whose college tuition I would paid by selling my mother's engagement ring. And I saw a stranger. Someone who viewed my love and sacrifice as weakness, my loyalty as foolishness. You know what? I said quietly, picking up my suitcase. You are absolutely right. I do need to think about my dignity. Jessica looked momentarily confused. Where are you going? To make some phone calls, I replied, walking toward the door to arrange my future. As I reached for the handle, Marcus called after me. Don't be dramatic. We are just being practical. When you calm down, You will see we are right. I turned back to look at them one final time. Maybe. Or maybe you will realize you never really knew me at all. With that, I walked out of their house and into the crisp November air. For the first time in decades, I wasn't walking away as someone's caretaker or supporter or financial contributor. I was walking away as a woman who finally understood her worth, and I was about to show them exactly what they would lost. I drove straight to the downtown Portland hotel where Mr. Harrison's family had covered my accommodation during the funeral arrangements. The elegant lobby, with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors, felt like a preview of my new reality. I wasn't the struggling woman Jessica and Marcus thought they knew. In my hotel room, I pulled out the business card Mr. Harrison's lawyer had given me and dialed the number. Mr. Peterson, this is Dorothy Chen. I am ready to proceed with the inheritance arrangements. Within 2 hours, I was sitting in the law office, signing papers that would transfer $12 million into my personal accounts. Mr. Peterson, a distinguished gentleman in his 60s, smiled warmly as we completed the paperwork. Mr. Harrison spoke of you often during our meetings, he said. He considered you the daughter he never had. This inheritance isn't charity. It is recognition of the genuine care you provided. As I left the law office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete independence. No one to support, no one to please, no one whose approval I needed. Just me and the freedom to build whatever life I chose. I spent the next week viewing properties in the exclusive Riverdale district, an area I would only seen from the outside during my cleaning jobs decades earlier. The real estate agent, a polished woman named Catherine, initially seemed skeptical when I inquired about the most expensive listings. These properties start at $4 million, she said carefully, clearly assuming I was wasting her time. I smiled and showed her my bank statement on my phone. Her entire demeanor shifted immediately. Of course, Mrs. Chen. Let me show you our finest available properties. The house I eventually chose was breathtaking, a restored Victorian mansion overlooking the Willamette River, with 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a library, and gardens that reminded me of European estates I would seen in magazines. The asking price was $42 million. I bought it with cash. The paperwork took 3 days. When I received the keys, I stood in the grand foyer with its sweeping staircase and stained glass windows, and laughed until tears ran down my face. Not from joy, exactly, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. Jessica and Marcus had spent years looking down on me, treating me like hired help, assuming I had nothing to offer their sophisticated lifestyle. Now I owned a house worth more than they would earn in their lifetimes. But I wasn't done yet, because people who discard you when they think you are worthless need to understand exactly what they have thrown away. I hired an interior designer, a landscaping team, and a housekeeper. Not because I couldn't do the work myself, but because I finally could afford to choose. I bought a new wardrobe, got my hair professionally styled, and purchased a luxury car. Not out of vanity, but as armor for what came next. The transformation took 6 weeks. When everything was perfect, I sent Jessica a single text message: "Would love to have you and Marcus over for dinner. Saturday at 7, address attached." Her response came within minutes. "Mom, where are you living?" "This address is in Riverdale," I replied simply. "See you Saturday." That weekend, I watched from my front window as Jessica and Marcus pulled up in their leased BMW, staring at my mansion with expressions of complete bewilderment. Jessica checked her phone 3 times, clearly convinced there had been some mistake. When I opened the front door wearing a designer dress and pearl necklace, Jessica's mouth fell open. "Mom? What? How? Whose house is this?" "Mine," I said simply, stepping aside to let them in. Marcus stood frozen in the foyer, his eyes taking in the crystal chandelier, the Persian rugs, the original artwork lining the walls. "There has been some mistake. You cannot afford this." "Actually," I said, leading them into the living room where I would arranged wine and appetizers. "I can, please. Sit down." They perched on the edge of my antique sofa, like children called to the principal's office, their faces cycling through confusion, suspicion, and growing alarm. "Where did you get the money for this?" Jessica demanded. "What did you do?" I poured myself a glass of wine, savoring the moment. "I worked for it, just like I always have." "Cleaning houses doesn't pay for mansions," Marcus said flatly. "Did you steal something? Take money from that old man?" The accusation hung in the air like a slap. After everything I would done, everything I would sacrificed. Their first assumption was criminal behavior. "No," I said calmly. "Mr. Harrison left me his estate in his will, $12 million. To be exact. As thanks for 3 years of companionship and care." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's face cycled through disbelief, shock, and something uglier calculation. $12 million, she whispered. $12 million, I confirmed. All legally mine. All earned through the same work you called undignified. Marcus recovered first, his expression shifting to that familiar entitled smirk. "Well, that changes things. Obviously, we misjudged the situation." "Obviously," I agreed. Jessica leaned forward, her voice suddenly warm. "Mom, this is incredible news. We had no idea. Of course, you don't need to worry about work anymore. You can come live with us. Help us prepare for the baby." "No," I said simply. She blinked. "What?" I said. "No. I will not be moving in with you. I will not be contributing to your baby expenses. I will not be providing free childcare or financial support." Marcus's face darkened. "Now wait a minute. We are family. You have obligations, do I?" I interrupted. "Because last week, when you thought I was penniless, those obligations seemed to flow in only one direction. When you assumed I had nothing to offer, I was a burden to be shipped off to institutional care." Jessica's mask began to slip. "We were just being practical. We didn't know about the inheritance." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't know. So you showed me exactly how you really feel about me. About my worth, about my place in your lives." "That is not fair," Marcus protested. "We were trying to help you find housing and employment in a nursing home," I reminded him. "Doing janitorial work, because someone with my background wasn't suitable to be around your children." Jessica stood up abruptly, her pregnancy beginning to show beneath her tight dress. "You are being ridiculous. We are family." "Blood is thicker than money," I laughed. A sound with no humor in it. Funny how blood suddenly matters now that there is money involved. The next hour was excruciating. They tried every manipulation tactic in their arsenal: guilt, anger, false tears, empty promises, veiled threats. Jessica claimed pregnancy hormones had affected her judgment. Marcus insisted they would always valued me, but had been trying to protect my pride. But I would seen their true faces. I would heard their real opinions. And no amount of backpedaling could erase that knowledge. When they finally left after I would refused every request for money, every demand for reconsideration, every attempt to guilt me into supporting them, Jessica turned at the door with cold fury in her eyes. "You will regret this," she said, "when we have the baby. When you want to be a grandmother, remember this moment. Remember that you chose money over family." "I didn't choose money over family," I replied calmly. "I chose dignity over abuse. There is a difference." After they left, I stood in my beautiful home, surrounded by luxury I would earned through decades of thankless work, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for anyone else's happiness, success, or financial security. I wasn't obligated to sacrifice my comfort for someone else's convenience. I wasn't required to accept disrespect in the name of family loyalty. I was simply Dorothy, wealthy, independent, and finally free. But I knew this wasn't over. People like Jessica and Marcus don't accept rejection gracefully. They would be back, with new strategies and fresh demands. And when they returned, I would be ready, because I would learn something valuable in that mansion overlooking the river. Love without respect isn't love at all. It is exploitation wearing a family mask. And I was done being exploited. The first few months in my new home passed like a dream I would never dared to have. I furnished each room carefully, not with expensive pieces to impress anyone, but with items that brought me genuine joy. A reading nook by the library windows where morning light fell perfectly across the pages. A greenhouse where I could grow orchids and herbs year-round. A music room with the baby grand piano I would always wanted but never could afford. For the first time since Jessica was born, my days belonged entirely to me. I joined a book club at the local library, took art classes at the community college, and volunteered at a literacy program for adults. Simple pleasures that felt revolutionary after decades of servitude. But peace never lasts long when you are dealing with people who view your resources as their birthright. Jessica's first attempt at reconciliation came through her friend Miranda, who appeared at my door one Tuesday afternoon, bearing expensive pastries and wearing an expression of practiced concern. "Mrs. Chen," she began, settling herself in my living room as if we were old friends, "Jessica is absolutely heartbroken about your relationship." I poured tea calmly, waiting for the real reason behind this visit. "She is worried about you," Miranda continued. "Living alone in this big house, no family nearby. It is not healthy for someone your age." "I am 67, not 97, I replied. "And I have neighbors, friends, activities. I am hardly isolated." Miranda leaned forward conspiratorially. "But what about when the baby comes? Don't you want to be part of your grandchild's life?" There it was, the emotional manipulation I would been expecting. "Of course I would love to know my grandchild," I said carefully, "but not at the cost of accepting disrespect from the parents. Jessica feels terrible about what happened," Miranda insisted. "She was just stressed about the pregnancy, about money. You know how financial pressure can make people say things they don't mean." I almost laughed. Financial pressure? Jessica and Marcus lived in a $500,000 home, drove luxury cars, and took European vacations twice a year. Their definition of financial pressure was having to choose between designer handbags. "If Jessica feels terrible, she is welcome to apologize personally," I said. "But I will not be guilted into funding their lifestyle anymore." Miranda's friendly mask slipped slightly. "No one's asking you to fund anything, but surely you could help with the baby's college fund, or contribute to a larger house. They will need more space." "I am sure they will manage," I interrupted. "Marcus has a successful practice, and Jessica earns excellent money. They will be fine without my contribution." After Miranda left, I expected Jessica to call within hours. Instead, she waited 3 weeks before showing up unannounced on a Saturday morning. Her pregnancy now unmistakably visible. She stood on my doorstep, wearing an expression I remembered from her childhood. The calculated vulnerability she would perfected whenever she wanted something expensive. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let her in. She settled carefully in the living room, one hand resting protectively on her belly in a gesture, clearly designed to remind me of my impending grandmother status. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. "I was horrible to you, cruel and ungrateful. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I am hoping you will give me a chance to make things right." For a moment, looking at my pregnant daughter, I felt the old instincts stirring, the desire to comfort, to forgive, to bridge whatever gap had formed between us. But then I remembered Marcus laughing about my age, Jessica calling me a burden, both of them planning to ship me off to institutional care without a second thought. "What specifically are you apologizing for?" I asked. Jessica blinked, clearly not expecting the question. For how we treated you, for not appreciating everything you have done for me." "Be specific," I pressed. "What exactly did you do wrong?" Her composure wavered. We suggested the nursing home job. That was insensitive." "It was more than insensitive, Jessica. You called me a burden. You said I wasn't qualified to be around your children. You planned to remove me from your lives entirely." "We were scared," she protested. "About money. About the baby. About having enough space you were embarrassed, I corrected. By me, by my background, by what your friends might think of having a working-class mother around your sophisticated lifestyle. Jessica's mask cracked further. That is not true. We love you. No, I said quietly. You loved what I provided. The financial support, the free labor, the unconditional acceptance of whatever crumbs of affection you offered in return. But you never loved me as a person with dignity and worth. That is a horrible thing to say, Jessica snapped, her true nature emerging. After everything I have been through, after carrying your grandchild, you are going to sit there in your mansion and lecture me about dignity? Everything you have been through, I repeated. You mean getting pregnant with a planned baby while living in comfort I paid for? Jessica stood abruptly, her hand still cradling her belly. I didn't come here to be attacked. I came to reconcile with my mother. No, I said, standing as well. You came to reconnect with my bank account, just like Miranda's visit, just like every contact we have had since you learned about the inheritance. None of this is about me as a person. It is about accessing my resources. How can you say that? Jessica cried, and for a moment she looked genuinely hurt. I am your daughter. This baby is your grandchild. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means everything to me, I said softly. Which is why I will not allow my grandchild to grow up watching their grandmother be treated like hired help. Children learn what they live, Jessica. And I will not teach this baby that love comes with a price tag. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, her face cycling through hurt, anger, and finally cold calculation. Fine, keep your money, but don't expect to be part of this child's life. Don't expect to be called grandma. When they ask about you, I will tell them you chose wealth over family. Tell them whatever you like, I replied, but tell them the truth, that their grandmother loved them enough to demand they be raised with respect. After Jessica left, I sat in my beautiful living room and cried, not from regret, but from grief, for the relationship we would never had and never would have. I would always hope that someday Jessica would see me as more than a resource to be exploited, but some people are incapable of that kind of growth. Still, I would made my choice, and for the first time in my life, I would chosen my own dignity over someone else's convenience. The months that followed brought a campaign of harassment I should have expected, but somehow hadn't prepared for. Jessica and Marcus, realizing that emotional manipulation wouldn't work, switched to more aggressive tactics. First came the social media campaign. Jessica created posts on Facebook and Instagram painting herself as the victim of a cruel, money-obsessed mother who would abandon her pregnant daughter. The posts were carefully crafted, never outright lies, but twisted truths designed to generate sympathy. Old acquaintances from my working days began calling, confused and concerned. Dorothy, is it true you inherited millions and will not help Jessica with the baby? They would ask, that doesn't sound like you. I found myself in the impossible position of defending my right not to be exploited. How do you explain to people that love shouldn't require financial tribute, that refusing to bankroll someone's lifestyle isn't abandonment? The worst part was watching friends choose sides. Some understood after I explained the full situation. Others, particularly those who had struggled financially themselves, couldn't comprehend why I wouldn't share my wealth with family, regardless of how badly they would treated me. Then came the lawyer's letter. Jessica and Marcus were challenging the inheritance on grounds of elder financial abuse and undue influence. They claimed Mr. Harrison had been mentally incompetent when he changed his will, and that I would manipulated him for financial gain. The accusations were absurd. Mr. Harrison had been sharp as a tack until his final day, and his lawyer had extensive documentation of his mental competency. But the legal challenge accomplished its real purpose: public humiliation and emotional torture. Local news picked up the story. Elderly caregiver accused of manipulating wealthy patient ran as a headline in the Portland Tribune. My photo, an unflattering shot clearly taken from Jessica's social media, appeared next to Mr. Harrison's family portrait. I hired the best attorney I could find, a formidable woman named Patricia Wong, who specialized in inheritance disputes. She assured me the challenge would fail, but warned that the process would be ugly and public. Your daughter is trying to pressure you into settling. Patricia explained during our first meeting. She knows she cannot win legally, but she is hoping to embarrass you into giving her money. The strategy was effective. I couldn't go grocery shopping without feeling eyes on me, couldn't attend my book club without whispered conversations, stopping when I entered the room. The isolation was crushing for someone who had finally found community and belonging. But what hurt most was the betrayal itself. The child I would sacrificed everything to raise was now publicly destroying my reputation to get at my money. She was willing to paint me as a criminal, a fraud, a predator who had taken advantage of a vulnerable elderly man. 3 months into the legal battle, Patricia called with good news. "It is over," she said. Their lawyer withdrew the challenge. Mr. Harrison's family provided sworn statements about his mental competency, and the judge was preparing to sanction Jessica and Marcus for filing a frivolous lawsuit. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Victory in court couldn't restore my reputation or heal the wounds of public accusation. More importantly, it couldn't undo the knowledge that my own daughter saw me as an enemy to be destroyed, rather than a mother deserving respect. But Jessica wasn't finished. Having failed legally and socially, she tried one final manipulation that nearly broke me completely. On a cold February evening, she arrived at my door, visibly pregnant and crying hysterically. Behind her stood Marcus, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Mom, please," Jessica sobbed. "I am having complications. The stress from our fight, from the legal case. The doctor says it is affecting the baby. I could lose my child because of this." My heart stopped. Whatever else had happened between us, the thought of losing my grandchild was unbearable. "What kind of complications?" I asked, stepping aside to let them in. "High blood pressure," Marcus said grimly. "Preeclampsia. The doctor says she needs to eliminate stress from her life immediately." Jessica collapsed into my armchair, her sobs echoing through the room. "I cannot lose this baby, Mom. It is all I have left. If we could just work things out, if we could go back to being a family." Every maternal instinct I possessed screamed at me to comfort her, to agree to whatever she needed, to fix this crisis like I would fixed every other problem in her life. The old Dorothy would have written a check on the spot, would have begged forgiveness for causing stress during her pregnancy. But something about the scene felt wrong. Jessica's tears seemed performed, Marcus's concern calculated. And after months of lies and legal attacks, I couldn't ignore my suspicions. "I am sorry you are having health problems," I said carefully. "What does your doctor recommend?" "Less stress," Marcus said quickly. "Family support. Financial security so she can focus on the pregnancy instead of worrying about money." There it was. The real diagnosis. The same demand for money, wrapped in medical drama. "I would like to speak with your doctor," I said, "to understand exactly what is needed." Jessica's sobbing stopped abruptly. "You don't trust me, your own daughter." "I want to help appropriately," I replied. "If you are having medical issues, I should understand them clearly." Marcus and Jessica exchanged a glance I wasn't supposed to catch. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that the entire scene was orchestrated. "Give me your doctor's name and number," I said firmly. "I will call tomorrow to discuss how I can best support your health." "Forget it," Jessica snapped, her tears evaporating instantly. "If you cannot trust your own daughter, if you will not help without conditions and investigations, then we don't need you." They left in a storm of accusations and threats, but I felt strangely peaceful. The last tie binding me to their manipulation had finally snapped. I would offered reasonable help and been rejected because it came with accountability that told me everything I needed to know. A week later, I saw Jessica at the farmer's market, laughing with friends and carrying heavy shopping bags without any apparent distress. No sign of the medical crisis that had supposedly threatened her pregnancy. The baby was born 3 months later, healthy, full-term, and beautiful. I learned about my granddaughter's arrival through a newspaper birth announcement, not a phone call from the parents. It hurt more than I can describe, but it also confirmed that I would made the right choice. People who would use a pregnancy as a weapon, who would fake medical emergencies for money, weren't the kind of parents I wanted, raising my grandchild with my support. So I stayed in my beautiful house, with my garden, and my books, and my hard-won peace. And I waited to see what kind of woman my granddaughter would become. Raised by parents who valued money over integrity, maybe someday when she was old enough to think for herself, we would have a chance to know each other. Until then, I had my dignity intact and my resources protected. It wasn't the family ending I would dreamed of, but it was the one I would earned through a lifetime of choosing truth over comfort. And finally, for the first time in decades, that felt like enough. 2 years have passed since my granddaughter Emma was born, and the space between Jessica's family and me has settled into something like scar tissue, not painful anymore, but permanently changed. I catch glimpses of Emma sometimes, at the grocery store or in the park with Jessica and a nanny. She is a beautiful child with curious dark eyes and Jessica's stubborn chin. Each sighting breaks my heart a little, but also reminds me why I made the choices I did. Jessica and Marcus bought a larger house last year, not with my money, but with a substantial loan from Marcus's parents that came with strings attached. I can only imagine the pressure of that debt seems to have aged them both. Jessica looks tired in ways that motherhood alone cannot explain. And Marcus has developed a nervous habit of checking his phone constantly, as if waiting for financial disaster to strike. Meanwhile, I have built a life I never thought possible. My house has become a gathering place for women like me, those who have survived toxic relationships, who have chosen dignity over convenience, who have learned to value themselves after decades of devaluation. We call ourselves the Silver Circle, and we meet weekly to share stories, offer support, and celebrate our independence. Last month, I received an unexpected phone call that changed everything again. The caller was a social worker named Maria Santos, and her voice was gentle but urgent. "Mrs. Chen, I am calling about your daughter Jessica and her family. We have received multiple reports of domestic disputes, and there has been an incident." My blood turned to ice. "What kind of incident? Is Emma safe?" "Emma is fine, currently in temporary custody while we investigate. But your daughter was hospitalized last week after what appears to have been a physical altercation with her husband." The world tilted sideways. Whatever Jessica had become, however badly she would treated me, she was still my child. And Emma was an innocent caught in circumstances beyond her control. "Where is Jessica now?" I asked. "She has been released from the hospital, but has nowhere to go. The house was in Marcus's name, and he has filed a restraining order. She has no access to their joint accounts, no transportation, and she is refusing help from his family." I closed my eyes, seeing the pattern clearly. Marcus, facing financial pressure from his parents' loan, had apparently snapped under the stress. Jessica, having alienated her only potential support system, me was now truly helpless. "What about Emma? We are trying to place her with family while the situation stabilizes. Your daughter listed you as next of kin, but given the estrangement, I will take her," I said without hesitation. "And Jessica, if she needs somewhere to recover?" The silence on the other end was telling. "Mrs. Chen, are you sure? Given the history between you, this could be complicated." Complicated was an understatement, but Emma was my granddaughter, and Jessica, despite everything, was my daughter. When family members are truly vulnerable, not manipulating or scheming, but genuinely in crisis, old wounds have to take second place to human decency. 3 days later, I stood in my foyer watching Jessica walk through the front door she would last exited in fury and threats. She looked broken, in ways I would never seen, not the calculated vulnerability of her manipulation attempts, but genuine trauma. Her face bore fading bruises, her left arm was in a sling, and her eyes held the hollow look of someone whose world had completely collapsed. Behind her, Maria carried Emma, now a walking toddler with cautious eyes and Jessica's dark hair. My granddaughter looked at me with the wariness of a child who had learned too young that adults couldn't always be trusted. "Hello, Emma," I said softly, kneeling to her level. "I am your grandmother, Dorothy." Emma studied me solemnly, then hid her face against Maria's shoulder. The first few weeks were exactly as complicated as everyone had predicted. Jessica spent most of her time sleeping or staring out windows, emerging only for meals and Emma's basic care. She spoke to me in monosyllables, accepted help with the resignation of someone who had no other options, and avoided any conversation about the past or future. Emma was equally guarded, clinging to Jessica, but accepting comfort from me when her mother was too depressed to provide it. Slowly, carefully, I began building trust with my granddaughter through simple consistency, regular meals, bedtime stories, gentle play that asked nothing of her but presence. It was Emma who began to bridge the gap between Jessica and me. Children have an instinct for healing that adults often lose, and she seemed to sense that our household worked better when we all participated. "Mama sad," she announced one morning, climbing into my lap while Jessica sat silently at the breakfast table. "Yes, sweetheart," I agreed. "Mama's sad, but she is getting better." Emma nodded seriously, then slid down and toddled over to Jessica. Grandma Dorothy makes good pancakes." It was the first time Emma had called me Grandma, and the first time Jessica had smiled in weeks. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening when Emma had a nightmare and ran to my room instead of Jessica's. I was reading to her when Jessica appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "She trusts you more than me," Jessica whispered. "My own daughter." I looked at her over Emma's head, seeing not the manipulative woman who would try to destroy my reputation, but the frightened girl who had once needed me to chase away monsters. "She loves you," I said quietly. "But she has learned to be careful. Children who live with conflict develop that skill early." Jessica crumpled into the chair beside my bed. "I have ruined everything." "Marcus, you," Emma's sense of safety. "I don't know how to fix any of it." "You start by being honest," I said simply. "With yourself, with me, with Emma. No more manipulation, no more schemes, just truth." Over the following months, slowly and painfully, Jessica began to rebuild herself from the ground up. She started therapy to address the trauma from her marriage and the deeper issues that had made her so desperate for control and financial security. She got a job at a local nonprofit, earning a modest salary, but finding purpose in helping other women escape domestic violence. Most importantly, she began to see me as a person rather than a resource. We had long, difficult conversations about our history, my sacrifices, her entitlement, the mutual hurts we would inflicted. She apologized not just for the inheritance battle, but for decades of taking my love for granted. "I always thought you owed me everything, because you chose to adopt me," she admitted one evening, as we watched Emma play in the garden. "I never understood that love isn't a debt to be collected. We are still rebuilding. Some days are better than others. Trust, once broken, heals slowly and incompletely. But Emma has given us a shared purpose and a reason to keep trying." Jessica and Emma still live with me, and we have developed rhythms that work for all of us. Jessica contributes to household expenses now, insisting on paying her fair share despite my ability to support us all. It is a matter of pride for her, and I respect that need for independence. Emma calls me Grandma Dorothy and has no memory of the time when we were strangers. She is bright and curious and surprisingly resilient, with an innate kindness that suggests she will grow into a woman who values people over possessions. As for my relationship with Jessica, it is different now. Less intense, more balanced. I love her, but I no longer sacrifice my well-being for hers. She respects me, but no longer expects unlimited support without reciprocation. We are learning to be mother and daughter as equals rather than debtor and creditor. It is not the ending I planned when I first walked out of their house with my dignity intact. But it is better than I hoped during the dark months of legal battles and public humiliation. Sometimes, the best family stories aren't about perfect love or unshakable bonds. Sometimes they are about broken people learning to treat each other with respect, about second chances earned through genuine change, about children who teach adults how to heal. Emma is teaching us that every day, and for the first time in my 70 years, I am learning that family isn't about debt or obligation or blood ties. It is about choosing to love people who choose to love you back. And that is a lesson worth everything I went through to learn it. Thanks for listening to another story on Her Light. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about life, family, and finding your strength. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own dignity? How did you handle it? And don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel about women who found their way out of impossible situations. Sometimes, the hardest battles we fight are with the people we love most. But sometimes, those battles lead us to the peace we never knew we deserved. Until next time, keep shining your light.